Hi, I'm Casey, and I'm back with another diabetic review. Today, we're talking about The Scammer by Tiffany D. Jackson. For those of you who are just joining, I'm diabetic, and I like to read books with diabetic characters to review them on their accuracy and their representation. The Scammer by Tiffany D. Jackson is a book about college freshman Jordan as she navigates her first year of college. She lives with three other girls in a dorm, and at some point, one of their brothers, named Devonte, comes to live with them and he starts to control their lives, sort of like a cult. The diabetic character that I'm going to be talking about is one of Jordan's roommates, Lauren. At first, the diabetic representation was pretty good. Lauren sort of hides the fact that she's diabetic at the very beginning, and then she opens up to everybody. And I had no problem with the way that all of that happened. It seemed to very natural, the way that it all occurred. Jordan, as a character, is very cognizant of the fact that Lauren is diabetic. And at one point, she even talks about like slipping her a granola bar because she was worried about her blood sugar. And as the girls get farther and farther into the cult, I think that she shows the right amount of concern for Lauren. And the amount of concern is especially valid because at some point, Lauren declares that she no longer needs her insulin because of some of the lies that Devontae is telling her. And this is sort of where the representation starts to break down for me a little bit. At this point, if Lauren does indeed get rid of all of her insulin, she would survive for maybe another 48 hours, and at that point would definitely need to be hospitalized after probably 24. And while this is not one of the most like egregious errors I've seen in a book, it's definitely not 100% accurate. And I guess, like, if I was suspending my disbelief, I, like, could believe that it was true. Another, like, sort of problem with the end of the book is that it wraps up a lot of the secondary characters very quickly, and so you don't really get to see exactly what happens to Lauren. There's, like, a throwaway sentence at the end of the book that's sort of like, "Oh, and then she goes to live back with her parents," which are, like, good. Another thing I want to point out is that we're never explicitly told what type of diabetes that Lauren has, just that she has diabetes. And so I guess if she had type 2 diabetes, it'd be more plausible for her to stay alive for longer, but without being told explicitly, I can't say for sure. Type 1 and type 2 diabetes are very different. They affect you in very different ways. And because the book takes place in HBCU, which is a historically black college and university, it's a complete missed opportunity to talk about the prevalence of diabetes in non white people. The percentages of people with diabetes are highest in indigenous and black communities. But at this point, it just kind of feels like plot convenience, which is sort of how I felt about One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware, where it was like, yeah, the diabetic representation was like okay, but how did they survive for so long? You could replace the diabetic representation in this book with a lot of other disabilities, and the story would be essentially the same, which to me doesn't feel like very good representation. I think I'm settling on like a C grade for this one. It wasn't horrible, it wasn't egregious, it was just sort of there.